Hello, everyone. My name is Indrajit Majumdar, and I'm the Executive Vice President, Z Network North and Latin America. I'm also a proud member at the Asian American Advertising Federation, or the 3AF. 3AF is the only American body when it comes to Asian advertising, Asian marketing, and the power of the Asian American consumer. As part of the webinar series that we are organizing during these unprecedented times, covering different topics that impact the Asian American community and the fraternity. Today's topic is insights on reaching Asian consumers during COVID 19 and post COVID 19. So, as we all know, the COVID 19 pandemic has hit everyone hard. Brands, especially, have had to be creative, not only on how to deal with lost sales and revenue, but also how to maintain engagement and brand loyalty, and most importantly, how to maintain relationships with their consumers. In this context, today, I have two very eminent panelists with me from two different industries and segments which have witnessed a rapid transition in this COVID period. So, my first panelist today is Nasser Akbotwala. Nasser is a senior marketing and business development manager at PayPal, a leading global money remittance service covering various continents. In his role, Nasser drives and oversees strategy and vision, customer communication, media and pricing strategy for Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America business corridors. Nasser is also a thought leader and represents the community in different forums. Welcome, Nasser.
Hey, Indrajit. Well, thank you for the warm welcome, and thanks to the 3AF family for having me on. Appreciate it.
Cool. My second panelist today is Shashank Shekhar. Shashank is the founder and CEO of Arcus Lending, a premier mortgage lending firm that features in INC top 500 list of fastest growing companies in the US. He is one of Amazon.com's best-selling authors and has published widely acclaimed books such as My First Home, First Time Home Buying 101. He is also a prominent TV and radio personality and appears on shows related to mortgage and lending matters. Welcome, Shashank.
Thanks, Indrajit. Thanks for having me.
So without much ado, I'll just start open this discussion. So Nasser, my first question to you is, what have been your learnings about consumer behavior in the current time? If you could share some insights with our audience here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you again for having me. I think these are uncertain times for all of us. And when we say it's once in a generation, we really mean once, really, however long the earth has been around that we've witnessed this. We're constantly learning as it goes. I think one thing we knew about our business is that people care about their family a lot. And that comes with the money transfer business. But you really see it occur when there's either natural disasters happening or pandemics happening. People, their first instinct is to think about their family and think, what do I need to do to provide for my family? How do I get money there or support to my family in a very quick manner so they can get the supplies they need, so they can, be safe in their home or their shelter when the lockdowns eventually become more strict. So what we noticed was a immediate, I would say, concern for families and a rushing to send money. That was an immediate impact. And I would also say from a sender side, in the US and everywhere else, there's a lot of uncertainty in the future of our economics or our economy. People are perhaps spending less money because, obviously there was an initial drastic stock market drop when this time started, and while the market has recovered a bit, we are noticing that customers are pretty uncertain about what's going to happen. I would conclude with the fact that I think for everyone that was able to receive a CARES check from the government, those are also important lifelines for our customers, and their natural thought, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is how do I take some of this money and help my family? Customers are looking for ways to not leave their house and adopt a service that is online and serves their online needs and allows them to complete their transaction in a safe manner that allows them to adhere to the quarantine rules. So it's a ton of behavioral change we're seeing in a very short amount of time. I hope that gives a good overview of what we're seeing.
Yes, it does, Nasser. Very well explained. So I would come with the same question to Shashank. Shashank, in your respective uh, genre or in your segment, what are the sentiments that you've seen?
So yeah, just carrying forward with what Nasser says is that it's so unprecedented. Is that it's you could see that even the consumer behavior changing from the time it first struck to as the weeks progressed. And it's if you come across something which is once in a generation or something that you have never seen before, then you see a varying degree of changes in consumer behavior as the things unfold. So what we saw, say in the first week or second week of March, is that the first thought that the consumers, of course, had was one of safety. It's like, how bad is this thing, and how will it impact me or my family at the very core of existence itself? Is that how does it impact us on our health, for example? And then once you've kind of settled into that a little bit, then you start looking at other things that you need to survive during that lockdown. And as Nasser said, people then try to work with services or products that are easily available while they are in the lockdown. So even within the mortgage industry, for example, which anyway sees a lot of change on a regular basis, and which had seen unprecedented, again, changes during the last 8 weeks. I actually wrote a post on medium.com saying how 2020 will be much worse than 2008. And I published in the second week of March when not too many people were talking about it, because when you are in the mortgage industry, you can see the impact on the financial markets. And they are the leading indicator into what will happen to the rest of the market, as in stock markets, of course, saw a plunge. So we saw that the consumer behavior changing in the sense that a lot of the consumers were, of course, trying to pull out from an expensive purchase like buying a home. That's not something that comes to your mind immediately after a pandemic hits a country or hits the world. That's probably the last thing that you're thinking. And so what we have seen with consumers is that while that was the initial thought, slowly as some of the markets reopen, slowly as there is a little bit more optimism in the sense that this may not be as bad moving forward as it had been over the last 8-10 weeks. People are thinking more towards, hey, how can I take benefit from something like this in a place where the economy is in a situation where it is and mortgage rates are low. Can we capitalize on that and maybe refinance and save on our mortgages, or maybe even buy some of the cheaper assets that might be available down the road because of the unemployment projections that we are seeing? So we have seen one from, again, just concluding it here, one from where a complete shock and disbelief and a focus on just the health aspect and saving your near and dear ones, to moving forward a little bit with some optimism and trying to take a little bit of benefit or capitalize on some of the cheaper assets that might be there, or cheaper borrowing rates that are available right now.
Okay. That's pretty well explained, Shashank. So from when you were talking, you mentioned something very interesting, and from there, my next question comes, and I'm pretty keen to ask both of you that same question.
Mhm.
Since this is more of an Asian consumer forum, and we are talking mostly about the Asian consumer,
Mhm.
and like since both of you serve multiple ethnicities and multiple communities, one question that was coming to me was that we all know that Asians, especially South Asian, index very well. They index very high when it comes to home buying, when it comes to global money remittance, like China, Philippines, India, they all stand pretty tall in that order. So when you are witnessing this change in this whole behavior, how would you how would you explain that in spectrum of the Asian consumer, like more the South Asian consumer or the Asian consumer? So Shashank, if you would like to take that question first.
Sure. Again, as I said, is that when something like this happens, it impacts everyone at the same level, and we know that the Asian customers or Asian borrowers are on an average better qualified, so to say, whether you're looking at credit parameters here or when it comes to say if I were to talk just about the industry I'm in is within the mortgage segment, but the behavior in the beginning was almost identical across different demographics because we do serve, of course, all the demographics in the country. I guess the extent of it kind of settled down, then you will see that people who have a little bit more asset or a little bit more cushion to work with, they will be looking at this as an opportunity, so to say. Is that what can we do with the assets that we have to capitalize on an environment that offers low borrowing cost, for example, or even discounted asset prices. And we have seen that assets across the board, whether it's oil, whether it's commodity, whether it's stocks, and even real estate. Real estate is usually a lagging indicator, which means that it does not start showing on day one. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks before you will start seeing that kind of impact. But you will see that any affluent demographic, and we know that South Asian, of course, is one of those segments, will take advantage of that as the things move forward, and will try to say acquire assets or borrow at a lower rate that might be offering. But overall, something like this, Indrajit, is that I think that it impacts us more at the very core of existence, as I say, more at a human level. And all demographics would react to a pandemic in a very similar fashion, irrespective of what their, I would say, how affluent they might be. Of course, somebody who's affluent will have more cushion to work with, and maybe they're less worried, maybe they're less anxious, and maybe they feel a little bit more optimistic about the fact that this is something that will not impact them in the same way compared to somebody who may not be that affluent.
Okay, cool. Nasser, the same question I would ask you in a different way. Since you serve multiple corridors across the globe, uh, how would you like put this in perspective with the Asian consumer or the South Asian consumer, to be more precise?
Yeah, as Mr. Shekhar eloquently pointed out, um, and as many have said, the virus does not care about affluence or wealth or anything. And I think we're seeing, as he eloquently said, it doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum. It's hitting everyone on all ends of the economic spectrum and across all corridors. So we're really seeing two really big habit shifts we're seeing right now, as I pointed out earlier, which is traditionally people would, when they had to send money, were in the remittance business, they would have to wait in line to send money. They have to go to a store to send money. And we're seeing a pretty big shift due to the quarantine, due to the lockdown, that customers are opting for another way. They have to adhere to government regulations and government lockdowns, and they care about their own health and their safety. And they're looking for other means support their family back home, right? So, I mean, there's an immediate shift to reliable online businesses that it's yet to be determined the impact on the brick and mortar, but what oftentimes the hardest part for an online business is the initial adoption. And if there's a very big push to move towards online right now, we'll see what the lasting impact is on our competitive brick and mortar sets. So I would say that is one big change we're seeing across all corridors right now, where you know people are shifting to an online business. I would say the second shift we're seeing is again related to the families back home is consumers are opting away from telling their families to go pick up cash at locations and sending money through a more reliable bank deposit means, right? Because through a bank deposit, you don't have to ask your family to go pick up the cash at a location, because that puts them at risk for standing in line and not being able to socially distance properly. So there is a shift, where a slight shift we're seeing in that respect, as well as Zoom and PayPal also offer a reload product, and typically in these countries you can go to the corner store and reload your phone very easily by yourself. But unfortunately, as we all know, these reload little shops, these pawn shops, have closed up. They're not essential businesses. And now families are wondering, how do I reload my phone? How do I, keep connection with my loved ones when all these little stores are closed up? And we're seeing a big adoption of our reload product, which is really focused on not forcing your family to go out to reload their phone and add credit to their phone. You can do it from the comforts of your own home here in the US or in Canada or in Europe. So it's really a focus of keeping people indoors, keeping people safe, and preventing as much, limiting the need to go outside as much as possible.
Perfect. So pretty well explained, Nasser. From this, I again put another question to you, that we've all witnessed a drastic shift in the media and entertainment consumption trends in the past month and a half.
Mhm.
Restricted mobility, public interaction, and spending time away from home. As you were mentioning, the focus is more on safety and social distancing and all. So, since both of you folks are marketing experts and have been at this, what media strategies are you implementing during COVID-19 to maintain consumer engagement and loyalty? So, Nasser, if you could talk a little bit, and then I'll go to Shashank with the same.
I think there's always a little bit of, I wouldn't say hesitation, but a little bit of worry about marketing to consumers in the time of a pandemic and a disaster. You don't want to, as a brand, appear insensitive or trying to take advantage of the current situation we're in. So I think it's always important to have that in mind. That said, from our end, our strategy has always been to be omnipresent in front of customers. We're not really shifting away from that strategy, but I do think we are changing our message a little bit towards recognizing our customers for all the hard work that they do and how vital they are to the economy. Slight creative changes we are implementing that I would say are less transactional in a way, but more human in a way, right? And I think we all need that these days, and we don't need to be focused completely on the transaction part. We all are in this together. It's a global pandemic. So I would say that is one thing that's changing. I would say we maintain um, the fact that we're available 24/7 to customers. We've been that, and we've seen a drastic shift in obviously consumption in both TV and digital world. That's as people are at home, they don't really have other things to do, and our ads are being seen by more people than they were previously. So that's really the shift we're seeing in the media landscape. I'll pass that over to Shankar.
Shashank, if you could take this question.
Sure. I think brands need to recognize the change that they need to make to both the message and the platform during this time. As Nasser mentioned, the last thing that you want to come across is opportunistic. Is the fact that just because you have something to market, you would market and come across as insensitive. Empathy quotient has to be extremely high for brands right now. And some of the products may not even be, I would say, an appropriate product or a service to market right now. It might just be, you might just be better off not to market yourself at all, or find, as I said, an empathy angle to marketing yourself. So one is the messaging itself, is that we need to be very, very careful that just because you can reach to people because they're consuming more social media right now does not mean that you should be, especially with the same kind of message that you were probably doing it before. So that's on the message. On the platform itself, I think it's very obvious if you look at any kind of data trends across media, and of course you know that very well, is that the consumption through social media and through e-platforms is of course pretty much through the roof. I wrote a blog post very early during the crisis about wild fluctuations in mortgage rates. And typically my mortgageblog.com, the blog that I write, would typically get a couple of thousand hits for any blog that I would write. And that one got 26,000 hits in the first, say, 3-4 days that I wrote it. It's because one, of course, people are consuming more on these platforms, social media or blogs or videos, even television, of course, they're at home. Also because they are really craving for, in terms of communication, the right news from the right people. It's especially in my world where you can get people to talk about all kinds of things, where even experts on CNBC, so to say, they don't really understand how the industry works from the inside. It's very important, at least I was making sure that my consumers are getting the news from me and not from say CNBC or CNN or Fox, anywhere else, when it comes to my industry. And so for me personally, we have amped up a lot on content creation, which is through different platforms, whether that's through videos or text, which is my blog. We have also amped up our communication directly to the borrowers through email marketing. I would not call it marketing because those are education-based or education-focused messages that's going. Nowhere we are talking about the fact that, hey, come work with Arcus Lending because we are the best. The messaging is not saying that. The messaging is more about, let's break it down what's happening and how it can benefit you, or just so you know that this is what's happening and this is what you need to do. So that has been taken very, very well within our community and within our database. They have been extremely appreciative of the fact that we have kept themselves updated. And moving forward, really that's where our shift is. And my feeling is that this shift will last for a very long time, if not forever. Of course, people will go back to radio because they will be driving more. As you know, I had a very popular TV and radio show called Mortgage Matters on ZTV, and you are aware of that. But we have really pushed a lot of messaging on online platforms, and most of the messaging is really education focused than sales focused.
Perfect. No, pretty well explained. Again, both of you, from whatever we've seen in this past month and a half. I know it's still early days, but the way you are predicting things and trends would change. I think they're very pertinent. So I move on to the next question. I would rather say two questions that that I would like to ask you is how do you see in this current circumstances uh, the next, the remaining 2019 and the calendar year 2020? I know we are in the second quarter now, April to June, so fairly 6 months of the current calendar is left, and they're still predicting that COVID would be here for at least a month, month and a half, and by the time it gets completely erased and stuff. So the remainder part of the year and 2020, what would be some of your interesting predictions or highlights that you would like to mention about? Nasser?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if this is gonna stop in a month. I'm perhaps more pessimistic, but I would defer to the experts. I think we're a little lucky in California where we have a governor who's probably taking this, some may say, more seriously than needed, but I wouldn't argue that as someone who lives with someone who is immunocompromised. I would rather be more cautious than not cautious. Um, I think it's uh, look, there are some states opening up right now cautiously, and California has announced plans for phase 2 openings and etc. Uh, we've seen globally when countries reopen up, there's another cluster and of people being infected. So if you ask me, how do I see the way forward in 2020? Uh, I think people are going to be very cautious in 2020, both from a spending perspective as well as returning to normal habits. This is a jarring event. At least in my perspective, it is. Like, I don't know. I feel when I look at old pictures of myself close to people, I'm still like, wow, was I really that close to that person? And should I have been that close? And public transportation now is almost one of the riskiest things you can do, right? Because you're boarding a train, you're boarding a bus with people that you have no idea how serious they were about their self-quarantine, what habits they've been doing. So, when it comes to the market and trends, I think, as I said earlier, I think consumers, especially in our remittance market, will be conservative, but they will continue to aggressively support their family um, abroad. That's one of the special things about the category we're in, is that it's an altruistic category almost, where you do things for your family. And there's also a segment of customers who do send money abroad for investment purposes. We know that's very big in India. People paying for real estate, people paying to deposit money in their NRE and NRO accounts. And I think people are going to be cautious. The India economy has suffered a lot during this. I know the Nifty has gone down a ton. And it remains to be seen to see how people are going to react to a event that's never happened before. It's hard for me to tell. My guess is a lot of caution and a slow recovery to normal, maybe by 2021 spring, is my estimate. I don't. I think this was a jarring event for people. Up to
Absolutely.
you.
I agree, Nasser, and very well put and well analyzed from a personal and practical angle. Over to you, Shashank. What would be your take on the remainder 2020, the 6 months that we have, and 2021?
So, of course, I'm not here to predict the future of COVID-19. I have no qualification, and then there's but with all the indications that we see, of course, it's not going away anytime soon. As in even best case scenarios puts us months away, and again, that's our best case scenario. So. No, I'm not in terms of marketing communication. we are not budgeting for that's something like that would happen. Also, I think an event like this changes consumer behavior for a very long run. You would not see, there's not a V-shaped recovery that you would see from it. Like you're doing social distancing, and then we have the states open or counties open, and suddenly tomorrow everyone, and some people are, by the way, I'm not saying that's a universal fact, but people will still be very, very cautious when it comes to whether, say, making a buying decision, for example. And so from studying consumer behavior for a very, very long time, one thing that I can say with fair degree of certainty is that this is an event like this. It's something that's going to make an impact for a very long time for brands and so for brands out there. And they need to adapt themselves to the new scenario, whether it's being more empathetic in their messages, being less opportunistic, being more sensitive, whether it's being customizing their offerings so that people can buy their products and services from home, because people may be more comfortable doing that. And that's a trend that's been there for over a decade. So that's this basically COVID-19 hastened that trend of moving to the online space, which we all know was already there. So looking at that on one side, and then economy on the other, where I started Arcus Learning in 2008, and I was being interviewed on another podcast, and I was saying the same thing, is that what I could see at that time was a slowly or a gradual decline of economy, and which took almost 24 to 36 months before we hit the 10% employment rate. We did that in 3 weeks now, 3 to 4 weeks. And that's the kind of speed that we have seen in terms of the decline of the economy. The stock market is probably still sleeping and they don't understand the gravity of the situation. But when you hit an unemployment rate like 15% or 20%, that's only rivaled by the Great Depression of the 30s when we hit 24% unemployment rate. So if that's the future, and Nasser mentioned about stimulus checks and everything, but as in how long can you be providing a stimulus checks is the question. As in if we hit a 15% unemployment rate, even 10%, as in 2008, 2009, it took almost 4 years for the economy to bounce back. At any higher than that, as in, there's only to a limit you can pump in the stimulus money. So given all of that, as in, I don't see any immediate recovery. As in, there are some brands, of course, who are doing better than the others because they're needed more during this time. But if you look at economy in general, per se, Indrajit, I think we are in a rough time. And as marketers or CEOs, I think the most important message is not so much about predicting future, but to be very, very agile. What I've learned in the last 8 weeks is that I had to change my strategy sometimes every second day. That's how fast things were moving, is that I will make an announcement on Monday and I had to change that on Wednesday. And I think that's the more important thing, where you are not stuck on a point of view and then just design your entire plan based on that. I think the brands and the companies need to be very, very agile in this market. And if you don't, then you would get killed just like a lot of brands did during the Great Recession that we have seen.
Very pertinent and very well put, Shashank. And let's hope we come out of it better and stronger. So that was my last question and concludes today's seminar. I know it's a very busy weekday for you folks, both of you, early in the week and busy work day. So I want to thank our speakers, Shashank and Nasser, wholeheartedly for their time and expertise today. I also want to remind our viewers to visit 3AF's website at www.3af.org, and especially our resources page at www.3af.org/corona for helpful links related to the COVID-19. Once again, I thank you both, and this concludes our seminar. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Indrajit. Nice meeting you, Shashank.
Yes,
I look forward to meeting you both soon in person, not over a Zoom call. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.